Welcome to Semantically Imperfect, where we will identify, explore, examine, and navigate a plethora of topics concerning humanity and human development, moral discourse, parenting, and holistic health. I am yours truly, Semantic 7.
Peace, love, blessings in abundance. So glad to be in this space with you all again. So glad to be able to host another episode of Semantically Imperfect. It's an honor and a privilege to have this podcast. I never thought it was possible. I never thought that through my growth and transformation in my spiritual, moral, personal, mental processes, that I thought that I was going to be open and vulnerable enough to host my own digital platform to be able to touch the life of one person and to impact at least one person, so that person can impart knowledge to another person to help continuously nurture, nourish, and enrich the seed that has been sown. I also want to express the utmost gratitude to the Creator and in this beautiful universe, filled with so much wonder, filled with so much mystery. And it is a blessing to live a life where answers and understanding come in different shapes and form. And I'm very appreciative that the universe has aligned for us to be together in this journey of being our most emotional, imperfect, and vulnerable selves. So center your consciousness and relax your mind. Off we go to the depths below. Don't forget to hit up the IG at semantically_imperfect. Follow the podcast. Send us a DM. Tell us about your experience, how you feel about it. It's monitored 24 hours a day, so there will be someone always watching it and ensuring that your DMs will not go to waste. Also, hit up the email poeticsemantics7@gmail.com and let us know about how you feel about the podcast in a personally crafted email. You can send inquiries. You can submit an essential question of the day that you would like addressed and that you would like to be explored and navigated and examined. You can provide a testimonial if that is in your heart and your spirit. And also, this podcast is on all major listening platforms. Particularly, I would like to know how the podcast is doing and to be able to improve it to better fit the people listening. So go on Apple Podcasts or whatever listening platform and provide a review. Be as detailed as you like. Be as descriptive and evaluative as you like. And check those stars. Every piece of information during the development and construction of this podcast will help propel this podcast forward and expand the message to make it even more effective, clearer, and comprehensive. Just over this last week, I got to revisit a speech that I watched and also have read the transcription, before, months ago. And I revisited it again this week. And as I was conceptualizing what the topic of discussion was going to be today for this podcast today, this speech that I was watching really inspired and motivated me to share some insight and some knowledge about the experiences that I have been through and just what I was able to package from all of them after synthesizing the good, the bad, the ugly, the indifferent, the lessons learned, the wounds. After I was able to process through all of that and package it into something wholesome and comprehensive, this speech really sparked an inspiration. This particular speech that I was watching, it was Martin Luther King, and the speech was called The Three Evils of Society. And in this speech, he's addressing political activists, community support personnel, Christian leaders, and it's a call to action, and he's trying to unify them under one front against the economic desperation in America. This is in 1967, so it's 1 year before he was brutally assassinated. And if anyone has ever followed Martin Luther King out there, his goals, pursuits, message, intent, plans begin to drastically and radically change once the Vietnam War started to pop off. Without going super deep into the speech, I just want to highlight that from that speech, he highlighted the three evils of society as being racism, extreme materialism, and then the last one is poverty. And from that, there were two quotes that really resonated with me and really amplified the importance of human beings and collectively humanity having a firm set of moral principles, and ethical virtues. The first quote by Martin Luther King is when he answers his own question about what happens to a dream deferred. And he says it leads to a bewildering frustration and corroding bitterness. And then I asked myself, how do you define a dream? Well, we know what psychologists, social scientists, neuroscientists, we know what they say about a dream being the mental imaging in the unconscious mind. But knowing that this came from Martin Luther King's mouth, what dream is he talking about within the context of this speech? And I evaluated the word dream as a pursuit towards freedom, equity, justice, and then at an individual level, self-determination and excellence. I'm not trying to sound pretentious, and best believe me, I wish that I would have had the opportunity to speak with Martin Luther King Jr. myself. But knowing what he stood for as far as freedom, equality, justice, knowing that he was a man of God and he exuded humility, that he was altruistic, and there's so many other words that I could describe him. I can only imagine that the dream is not specific at all, and that he was looking broadly, and that he was also looking at the people who have been oppressed, marginalized, disenfranchised, and relegated. Then it had me think about, like, what is the dream for humanity? And I'll put the bookmark there. The second quote that really touched my spirit. He says, when scientific power outruns moral power, we end up with guided missiles and misguided men. So already then, he started to realize that with the modernization and the technological advancements, that was going to replace, or I should say not replace, but that was going to create some voids in the moral identity of people. And so as I'm taking all this in, I said, what is the essential question of the day going to be? And one thing that I have not addressed is that, this podcast is called Semantically Imperfect. And I've never addressed the imperfect. Because we all, in our minds and in our hearts, in our bodies, want to achieve a level of success, achieve a level of greatness and excellence. We want to accomplish things. We have the tendency to be goal-oriented. And especially living in a civilization where individualism, capitalism is a motivator and an igniter of a mentality to work hard, dedicate yourself to the craft, and never give up. And so I wanted to address the imperfect. And the essential question of the day is, what does it mean to be imperfect? And what are the implications? And so when I look at this question, I had to first ask myself, before I could even share insight and share experience and knowledge and a perspective, I had to examine my imperfection. And what I learned from my imperfection is that I really struggled in my mental strength. I really struggled with holding true to personal morals, personal ethics. And for a long time, up until about 2 years ago, I allowed situations, emotions, other people to affect my mood, my attitude, and my actions. So there was a lack of mindfulness. And so when I look at being imperfect, I look at it as embracing the developmental journey. Wherever you came from, whatever family unit that brought you into this world and taught you culture, taught you traditions, beliefs, an outlook, a perspective, whatever institutions, social groups, and networks that have influenced the way you think, behave, perceive, whether externally or internally. Your developmental journey will never end in perfection. Your developmental journey, through experiences and through interfacing directly with the details of those experiences, will get you closer to striving and thriving. By developing a frame of reference, a framework to help guide your footsteps, to help guide your decisions, to help guide the way that you conceptualize yourself in this world, and also how you interact and socialize with others. And so when I started looking at the essential question of the day, I looked at three pillars. Three pillars that are essential to the developmental process of embracing your imperfection and working towards striving and thriving. And those three pillars are morality, mental healthiness or mental wholeness, and mindfulness. And so when I look at the morality aspect, I like to trace it back to before there were any psychology, psychiatry, social sciences. Back into the ancient civilization where philosophy was the primary way of inquiring, questioning, and wondering about human nature. And there's a particular concept that I love about the study of moral development and moral identity, and it's a concept called Eudaimonia. And Eudaimonia was coined by Aristotle. And Eudaimonia means the highest degree of achieving a sense of happiness and fulfillment in one's life through the prioritization of virtues and ethics. And so, philosophically speaking, Eudaimonia was not a mindset, but it was a quality of life that as humans that we strive for to reach our maximum potential. And your eudaimonia is all based upon the values that you hold deeply and the moral principles that you hold true. And so I want to, and as I was uncovering the philosophical underpinnings of morality in the context of a human being striving to become their best, I also started looking at moral principles. And the moral principles that I looked at are interrelated with the concept of mental healthiness. And so these moral principles are, and this is not all inclusive, compassion, empathy, altruism, justice seeking, authenticity, honesty, and there is a huge list of moral principles that are the that anchor us in how we perceive, how we think, and how we interact with the world around us. And so as I started to uncover the morality, the philosophical underpinnings of morality, looking at eudaimonia being the highest state of self-actualization, and the moral principles which centers a person's cognitive ability to behave and act in a way that is beneficial to mankind and conducive to their own outlook and cultural implications. And then I started looking at mental healthiness. And when I started looking at mental healthiness, there's a reason why I say healthiness or wholeness, and I don't say mental health. Mental health, typically, there's a stigma attached to mental health. Sometimes mental health is synonymously talked about in the same breath as mental illness or a disorder. And there's also a school of thought that for mental health, that means someone is sick and needs treatment. And so mental healthiness or mental wholeness, it is more comprehensive, and it incorporates multiple dimensions that if we work on them and if we attack them vigorously to understand the impact that it makes in our life, it can help us become more functional human beings. And so when I look at mental healthiness, I look at personal well-being. I look at contentment and satisfaction, emotional competency, self-regulation, and connectedness. And so these components or factors of mental healthiness are directly influenced how we conceptualize our eudaimonia, meaning what we believe and what we hold true as our maximum potential, our maximum glory, our higher sense of self, and influenced by the moral principles that we hold true, that guides our footsteps, that guides our hand, that guides our tongue, our decision making, our ethical decision making. It also guides our emotional and social intelligence. And with being anchored in eudaimonia and moral principles, the mental healthiness aspect becomes a byproduct of a foundational moral fabric. And then lastly, for mindfulness, I look at mindfulness as introspection, reflection, careful attention, calming impulses through conscientious decision making. And so when you layer all of this up, morality, mental healthiness, or mental wholeness, and mindfulness, you can see that if you build the foundation of your self-concept or your identity and moral principles to live a virtuous life, those moral principles and your pursuit for self-actualization can help with, or influence, I should say, with your overall well-being, your happiness, your excitement, all those other positive emotions. And then, when you are struggling, going through crisis, chaos, sadness, despair, misery, dread, any type of plight, because you're so anchored and grounded, and you have the ability and you know who you are, you have that sense of authenticity. You know what you can handle. You know what triggers and bothers you. You're able to exercise mindfulness in order to bring yourself back to balance. And not allow anything to compromise your moral and your virtuous integrity. What do you all think about that? I really would like your thoughts about intersecting morality, mental healthiness, and mindfulness in a pursuit of embracing imperfection, in pursuit of becoming a thriving, flourishing human being. Let me know what you think. Let me know your thoughts at the email poeticsemantics7@gmail.com. Let us know via the DMs on IG, and also follow us on IG as well at semantically_imperfect. And then submit a review. Whether it's about this episode or the previous episodes or the episodes after. Your opinion matters. I've really enjoyed this opportunity to talk about how critical it is to embrace being an imperfect human. And embracing the fact that throughout this developmental journey, there are ways and there are concepts that we must learn and that we must continuously reassess, reevaluate, and refine in order to meet the needs of our changing environment and meet the needs of our changing self, to become more flourishing, more happy, more balanced, more level-headed, more productive, active, whatever your dream consists of. I want to leave you all with the quote of the day. We achieve emotional equanimity and self-control by discovering how to live in accord with our capabilities, character, and ethical values. Kilroy Olster, author of Dead Toll Scrolls. Thank you so much for being in this safe, non-judgment, non-committal space. I appreciate you all being your emotional, vulnerable, and imperfect selves. And I would say that it's a journey. It's a turbulent journey. But it's a journey that will one day show you all the fruits of your labor and dedication to the process of achieving your eudaimonia. I'm Semantic7. Thank you for tuning in on Semantically Imperfect. And I'll see you all on the next episode. Peace and love.